Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Chicago-based jazz alto saxophonist Shawn Maxwell. We caught up with him on International Jazz Day 2021, April 30th, to talk about his latest CD, Expectations and Experience, and his life in music. This Joliet, Illinois-born musician has released 9 albums of original compositions. His voice and foundation come from the music that he grew up with, rock, funk, hip-hop, R&B, and classical. His story is one you should hear. Enjoy.
No, hey man, it's still COVID times, so my schedule is as bizarre and weird as always. So no, I happen to have yesterday and today open, so it's all good.
It's like floating around with Grandpa in that little gravity chamber in Willy Wonka's kind of.
Oh, almost there, but yeah.
Right, yeah. I don't think we have the bubbles yet, but at any rate, hey, thanks for taking a minute. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Your latest album, the 2021 CD, Expectations and Experience. Talk to me a little bit about, this is coming out during a global pandemic, and I don't know, I'm not really asking like when this was actually time-stamped and made, but like it's coming out now during a time on the planet that's very peculiar. So talk to me a little bit about the timing.
The timing is actually on purpose and deliberate. It kind of goes back to, from the beginning of 2020, like a lot of people, our 2020 was supposed to look a lot different. We had a new album coming out the end of March in 2020 called Millstream, and we just hooked up with a label in Germany called Jazzline. Very excited about it. We had tours throughout the States starting in mid-February, going all the way through August. Then in September, the label is bringing us over to do Europe for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then we'd finish up the rest of the year here in the States. Everything was great. We started the first 3.5 weeks, and like everyone else, it kind of went kaput. and then, that album is kind of available, but still hasn't been released because the label's been pushing it back. And throughout 2020, I was just composing and continuing on my plan of like what I normally do, compose here and there, and I compose to things that are happening around me. And when it got to October and the other album kept getting pushed back, I started coming up with what would become this release, the Expectation and Experience. And we recorded that, and I can go more into the details of that, but we recorded that I recorded my parts January 2nd, January 3rd. The whole album is about 2020, the pandemic, and anything that happened. And my thought was I wanted to get this out before we were so clear, and hopefully the clear of COVID is closer than farther away. But I wanted to get this out while we were still in it, because I think everything on this album, you look at it, you listen to it, and if you read the notes that we've written on it, I think it all like resonates and hits home with everybody. And my thought was I wanted to do that now while you're listening, going like, oh yeah, instead of maybe 8 months from now when maybe some of us can't relate to some of the craziness that's gone on over the last year or so.
That's great. So talk to me a little bit about, with that in mind, I think a lot of people are creating art during this time and kind of trying to encapsulate it. I want to know, what do you ultimately want the audience, the download, the purchaser of this album to get from this experience?
Man, without sounding too artsy, I would have to say the emotion and the experience. I didn't plan to say that is part of the title. But no, what this whole thing is my reactions to everything that happened throughout 2020. And whether my reactions are the same as yours or anyone else's, I think people will be able to relate to that. And, I think there's power in that. And that's really what I'm looking to make. I mean, I could record a ton of different things, different originals, but that's, when I was making this, I just wanted to like this to be very emotional, no matter where you stood on any of the subjects or the events or anything. I have non-music friends or non-jazz friends that I've played this for, and even they're like, wow, that's powerful. So I guess, sorry for the long-winded answer, I'd say kind of more of the just emotion of it.
Let's go back to, the pieces of you that have kind of contributed to the sound and the vibe and the voice that you have. And there's a lot of elements, rock, funk, hip-hop, R&B, and classical, that have been kind of a part of your life. So talk to me a little bit about your childhood, kind of what went into that to give you such a love for music, and more specifically, why jazz became your path.
Well, I'm from Joliet, Illinois, and no one knows where that is unless you've seen the first 4 minutes of the Blues Brothers movie, where he gets out of the prison. That's about a mile or so down the road from my high school. So,
nice.
So yeah, I grew up in Joliet, and you know what? I wasn't really into any specific music, or I wasn't like I am now in a bunch of different things. I joined the band in fourth grade playing clarinet. And I did go to Joliet Central High School, which is one of the more historic, band programs. I believe if it's not the first one, it's one of the first. And the director there at the time, Ted Liga, was just, he's a hero and a legend in the band world. And he just had us playing top notch, and just, that's where I started developing my love for classical music. I didn't start playing saxophone until I graduated high school. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I got to admit, I was pretty unorganized. I was not very driven, and it was one of those things where I think I was working at a Burger King the summer after graduation of high school, living at my parents' house, and a few weeks before the fall semester for colleges would start, I remember my parents sit me down and going like, well, you're going to go enroll at classes at Joliet Junior College, or you're going to move out and get your own place. And that terrified me. So we signed up for classes at Joliet Junior College, and I just remember talking to the counselor and telling him I played clarinet. And at that point, he said, oh, you know what? We have a jazz band Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They always need saxophones. Let's put you in that. We'll get you a saxophone. So that's kind of where I was introduced to jazz. And the director of the jazz band at the time was actually a family friend, Jerry Lewis, who I credit with really getting me into the jazz. And from there, it expanded to other things. And then I remembered, okay, well, I did like rock back then. And I guess musically, I would say it wasn't until, that time of getting to college where I actually kind of started to figure things out for myself.
We are talking right now on International Jazz Day 2021, and there's still hints of 2020 and not a lot of live going on, but it's definitely been a very, very deep year of self-reflection for jazz. What does this day mean for you, and what do you think it means for all of us that love this art form?
Hopefully we're getting back to normal soon. I mean, the most beautiful thing about any live music, but especially jazz, is doing it live and with other people in the room and with a crowd in the room. And yeah, when we can get back to that, it's I don't want to sound too cheesy, but it's almost like tearing up, like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So I can't wait to do it again with people in the room.
I guess probably it would go without saying, I probably understand as a musician what you miss the most, but what have you realized about your power as a musician on stage, or the simple act of travel that we never really all thought about that much? What kinds of self-reflective things have you thought about that you're thankful for, that you're really looking forward to getting back to?
You know what? I have done a handful of gigs and performances since last summer. Not a lot, about, a very, very, very small fraction of what I normally would be doing. One thing I've noticed is how much, I think in the past, myself and other people have taken, how much we've taken live music for granted. Because when I played those few performances, not only did I see that the audience was very appreciative and very into it, just everyone I played, people would come up to me afterwards, usually purchasing a CD or talking, and they were all like, oh my gosh, we've missed this so much. This is so great. And as they're saying that, I'm thinking in my head, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Yeah, I've missed this. This is so great. So, I think we've all maybe kind of taken for granted that there's live music, and I've done that too. It's Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever. I'm not working, sitting at home on the couch, and I was like, oh, I should go check out so-and-so at the so-and-so. I'll get them next time. I'm just going to sit here. I don't think I'm going to be doing that again, at least not for a long time. So that's one thing I've noticed. And the other thing is, what we can do with technology and what we have been doing with the likes of Skype, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever, and the technology that we have at us, it has made things easier, but at the same time, it has made me, I'm not sure how to say it in exact words, but it's made me really appreciate the one-on-one in person, and how intimate that can be.
What are you the most proud of in your career up to this point? Or what's been the most surprising twist or thing that you've experienced as a professional musician?
Surprising twist or thing. Man, I think we'd have to talk for 2 more hours to get that. It seems like everything's a twist all the time. I mean, this last year, is definitely taking the cake of from pulling out the rug, not just from underneath me, but a lot of people. But the thing I'm most proud of is, you tell me, be honest with me if you feel that I'm, maybe I'm sounding kind of weird on this. I am me. I've become me, and I'm trying to sound like me. When I was growing up, I when I got into jazz, I wanted to sound like Cannonball. I wanted to do everything like Cannonball. Then I wanted to sound and do everything like Kenny Garrett, and then on to that. And then, with my albums, my writing, especially in the last, I'd say 7 years or so, I've been trying to be more of an individual, and I'm trying to write like you mentioned before, all those styles that are in my head that I go back and forth, not just jazz, but classical, rock, rap, and whatever you can name. I'm trying to mix that in. I'm trying to sound different. I say jokingly, whether you walk away with, oh, that was great, or I didn't care for that. I want you to know, oh, that was Shawn Maxwell. That's definitely him. So I'd say for a proud thing, I'd say if not doing it, I'm coming close to just, being more of an individual.
No, that makes total sense. Why do you love jazz?
Oh, man. Well, you hit me with that hard question right there. That's another, could be a long one. But I guess, you know what? It's because it goes into what I said on another one. It's the expression, and I can tell a story. And I can tell a story on the same tune 4 million different ways. The beautiful thing about when we tour and when we have a bunch of shows in a row, a lot of times we'll have the same set list of all my originals and mix it up here and there, depending on everything. But, we could play the same tune 7, 10, 12 days, nights in a row. And I count it off the same, but my solo is completely different each time just because of, the vibe of the room, how I'm feeling in general. Did I get enough sleep? Did I get too much sleep? Did I fight with my wife on the phone beforehand? Strike that line. I never fight with my wife. But, it's just the emotion of where it goes, and especially the room. How is the listening room? Are they along with that ride with you? I'm sorry. I was just saying, man, I'm rambling on at that point. I'm sorry.
So talk to me a little bit about when we do return to live music, when you're on stage or we're in the audience. What do you hope we all realize about the power of live music and jazz in our lives?
Don't take it for granted. And we have to go out and we have to support it. There's a joke amongst some of my friends here in Chicago area, keep jazz alive. It was kind of like a, tongue-in-cheek, just kind of ribbing each other about it, because whatever. But it's very much true. And, it's something that we have to go and we have to support. And I'm hoping that, like I said earlier, I hope that people remember what has been keeping them company for this last, year. It's everyone streaming concerts or listening to music. It's very much a part of their lives, and I'm hoping and I'm thinking that people are going to know that and go out and support it, so we can not only keep it alive, but maybe expand it, and some of these clubs that maybe were close to going under or weren't doing much before the pandemic, maybe we can change that and make things better.
So what was the first live show or live jazz show you saw that made you think that's something you want to do with your life?
Oh, man. Whew, gotta think back. I haven't thought about that in a while. I remember the first live jazz show I saw, is I mentioned earlier I went to Joliet Junior College after high school, and I'd only been playing jazz for about 2.5 months, and the director at the time, Jerry Lewis, said, "We're doing a field trip. You guys never listen to jazz. We're going to this place on Sunday called the Jazz Showcase in Chicago." And I guess they, I know now on Sundays they have a matinee, 4:00, and any age people can get in there. And he's like, "Everyone meet me here. We're going to carpool up. We're going to see the Count Basie band." And I think Frank Foster might have been running at that point. And if not, I apologize because that was a while ago and I haven't thought about that in a while until now. But I do remember seeing the big band, at the Jazz Showcase. This is when they were at the Blackstone Hotel in Chicago because they've changed locations a handful of times recently. And it was just like the sound of the band and just like, it's hard to explain, but the vibe, like it was fun the whole time. It was just like when I walked out of there an hour and a half or so later, my body was kind of like buzzing, and just watching the guys stand up and take solos, improvising, and the band following them and listening and communicating along and growing. That's when I was like, "Oh, dude, I got to do that." I can't do that right now. At that time, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but man, that looks awesome.
If you could get into a jazz DeLorean and go back in time and see a show, who would you see? And who would you want to talk to when they got off stage?
Oh, man, you got great questions. Next time I got to do my homework here. Come on. You know what? Who I would like to talk to more would be Michael Brecker. I saw him live a handful of times, and it was when I was in college, and I was terrified to talk to him. And it's like, who would have known that he would have passed so early as he did, unfortunately. But he's a guy that I've listened to online, interviews and his career. He's a big influence of mine because, in my opinion, he was a great jazz musician, but man, he crossed over to so much other genres and like brought all of those genres with him. I'm under no delusion that I sound like Michael Brecker, but a lot of my approach and mixing genres really does come from him. So if I could just talk to somebody, it would be probably him. And then going back to hear somebody, I never got to hear Diz, or of course not Charlie Parker. That's a little before my time. The whole bebop era, I guess, just to hear these guys play live, like at the time, the heyday of when they were doing it, and just probably the vibe of the room and just the vibe of the country at that time. It has to be a mix of interesting, scary, exhilarating, and just odd.
Yeah, without a doubt. So my final question to you is this: everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're the one that's living your life. Who do you think you are?
I'm Shawn Maxwell. And I spent a lot of years of my life worrying about what other people thought about me, whether it be artistically, composition, when I'm playing, whatever, being a musician, being a person, being a father. And I don't know exactly when, but I got out of my head a handful of years ago, and I just started saying, I'm going to be me. I'm going to bet on me. I'm going to fail or succeed as me. And in that time, I've had many successes, and I wouldn't say failures, but I've had times of things that didn't work. But I am me, and I'm Shawn Maxwell, and I'm very proud of myself on that. And my goal is to continue pushing me to be more me, become more comfortable with myself, and experiment and see what kind of different things I come up with. Because, like I said earlier, I want to create, I want to be different, and I want, when you hear something, however it strikes you, you're going to be like, well, I got to hear more of that. What is that?
That's a wonderful answer. Shawn, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz today. Good luck with the album and the return to the live world.
All right. Thank you very much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Chicago, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Shawn for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.